Welcome, everyone. You're watching and listening Part of Your World, written by Allison D'Agostino and narrated by her as well. Please watch and listen as much as you can for the next few months. At the beginning of May, I will be rereading the collection under the title of Aquatica instead. I will explain more when the book reading commences. Thank you, and I do hope you enjoy Parts of Your World.
Garnet sighed. I guess mermaids can go ashore. Miss Tarleton gasped. Then, that means you can come home whenever you want, she said. She looked at her. What do you think? Do you want to go back to the hotel? She gave her a questioning look. It's your choice. You could even come back tonight. Get some good sleep for the ocean tomorrow. Garnet looked out at the ocean and back to her mom. She sighed. I don't know, Mom. Now that I'm part mermaid, I feel like I belong in the ocean. I can't just abandon it altogether. She paused. I have this strange feeling that if I leave, I might not be able to go back as a mermaid. Ever. She closed her eyes and sighed nervously. It was quiet for a few moments. I should have known you would want to stay in the ocean, she whispered. She sighed and shook her head. She smiled and put her hand on her daughter's knees. Whatever you choose, Nettie, I will support you no matter what. Really? Her mom nodded. She moved closer and gave her mom a hug. I love you so much, Mom. While she hugged Garnet, a tear came down her cheek. Your mother would be so proud of you, she whispered. She gently kissed her cheek. Garnet pulled away. She looked confused and stunned. Mom, what are you talking about? Miss Tarleton sighed. You said I wasn't adopted. You lied? She shook her head fiercely. I didn't lie. Your mom died soon after you were born. She said if anything happened, she wanted me to take care of you. I'm your aunt. Garnet's eyes were wide. Her mouth was wide open. There were times when I wanted to tell you. I really wanted to tell you. I thought it would be best to wait until you're 16 or 18. It was quiet. Is Marion my sister? Garnet asked. She's your cousin, dear. Garnet gasped. What about Dad? Is he... Her aunt smiled. He's your father. That would mean Patrick isn't just my brother. He's also my cousin? Her aunt hesitated and bit her bottom lip. Wait, Garnet said suddenly. You and Dad. She became confused and frustrated. You and Dad married? How could you? And then have a child? Why? Miss Tarleton felt hurt. She was quiet. We lived together after you were born. Not until you turned 2 did we decide to get married. At first, your father and I thought it was the right thing to do. She paused and sighed. I guess with Amber gone. After a while, I started falling in love with him. He had a hard time not being with your mother. They really were meant for each other. She paused once more. A year or 2 after we married, your father... I think he wanted to clear his mind. He started talking about adopting a child. Garnet gasped. Oh my gosh, she whispered. Patrick was adopted? Her aunt nodded. It was quiet for a long time. Miss Tarleton... Oh, I already printed one. Miss Tarleton eyed Nettie. She had a soft smile on her face. "You know, you are just like your mother," she whispered. Garnet looked at her. "Really? How?" She looked eager. "Well, she had 2 natural hair colors, like you. Instead of brown and red, it was black and red-orange." She smiled. You have her face shape. She ate salt almost all the time. She wouldn't drink salt water. She would eat salt with ice cream." Garnet made a face. "I know. She also loved to swim. I remember trying to find her one time. I found her swimming in an indoor pool, except she didn't have her top on." Her brows rose. Garnet gasped and giggled. "Wow, now I know I'm not the only one who does that. Did she ever get to swim in the ocean?" Miss Tarleton thought for a moment, and then raised her brows again. "Amber only saw the ocean once. Never got in." "That's my mom's name," Nettie thought to herself. "I'm not surprised." "How come?" she asked her aunt. "I never could figure it out." She paused. "Now that I think about it, when she and I used to share a room, she would have these nightmares. It was always about storms. At least I think they were storms. Whenever she tried telling her nightmares, it sounded like it was part of a memory she once lived through." "What were the nightmares about?" "Well, let's see if I can remember." She thought hard. "It was always the same nightmare. Only once did it start differently. It was raining really hard. She was actually in the water, only your mom was a young thing. She saw a ship, and it was tossing back and forth in the storm. Lightning struck and hit the ship. The whole thing was sinking. She dove into the water to get closer to it." She paused. What happened next?" Garnet asked curiously. "This next part always confuses me. There's someone else in the water. He calls her name. She barely hears him, but she turns and sees the guy. She tries yelling out to him, but he doesn't respond. He holds out his hand. He begins to say something, but the sound of the lightning and thunder drowned out his voice. Then the waves crash into her. That's when your mother usually wakes up." "It's so strange. It does seem like it's part of a memory," Nettie thought for a while. "Did Mom ever try to remember the ship's name?" Miss Tarleton widened her eyes. "Why didn't we think of that?" She paused for a moment, and then sighed. Even if anyone asked her, she wouldn't remember. She would only remember how frightened she was. If I recall right, she would always say that she felt her family or someone abandoned her. Garnet looked at her aunt and then looked down. Her eyes started to fill with tears. And that is where I stop.